Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Kronich of Statewide News Service, jbiztechphilly.com, now columnist for the Jewish Press.
And I'm having a very good time being very Jewish-centric, as you can imagine. But anyway, I just wanted to introduce our latest guest, coming up from Columbia County, from the Hudson area, Paul Czajka, who's the district attorney for Columbia County. Welcome to the Jewish View. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you very, very much for having me, Mr. Kronich.
Your name,
Rabbi.
Your name is legendary in Columbia County politics and government. Well, yeah, because how many, you've been in government, what, 30 years now?
Well, about 35 or so.
So, you know, every 2 years you see a lawn sign up, you know, Czajka, some Czajka is running for something, you know, so, and they can pronounce your name now, so that's a good thing also.
Paul.
You know,
That's
it's
easy.
spelling it that you got to worry about. Well, what's the derivation? What's your...
My father's grandparents were from Poland, and my my father's mother and father were from Poland, my grandparents, and my mother's mother and father were both from Sicily.
Oh, so the
Your
Czajka
mixed
is
marriage, you call it.
Yes.
So the Czajka is Polish.
It is.
Yeah,
Oh,
sure.
yeah,
That
I see.
sounds like
Okay.
And I'm a second generation American times 4.
Well, the Poles have been very good to the Jews during World War II. I mean, there's a monument that's going up in Poland now about the non-Jewish Poles who saved the Jews in World War II. So it's just mentioning that off the cuff.
In fact, my father was in the Army during World War II, and he...
The American Army?
Yes, he was. And he went to Dachau the day after it was liberated.
Really?
Oh. What
That's
did he tell you
interesting.
about that experience?
Only
What
the
did he-
last year or so of his life.
Yeah, what did he tell you?
He said, I remember well, he drew a diagram for me of what he saw and what he remembers. Very obviously extremely disturbing. And he said that he could sometimes forget what he saw, but he could never forget what he smelled. For some,
It's interesting.
So
You
many
know-
people say that.
You know, it's interesting because I met a few people, again, non-Jewish, but they were in the United States Army. And, you know, it's interesting because you don't know, obviously, if you're in a concentration camp, obviously it's traumatic and doesn't need to talk about it. But I felt bad first time I met, you know, you think, oh, the Americans say, here we are, we're victors, you know, they're happy. And, you know, their children like yourself said, you know, he didn't talk about it to us for number of years, and I pleaded for the person to be on the Jewish View to, you know, because that's an interesting story, an American soldier liberating a concentration camp. You know, to me it was a good story. And he says, you know, I would do you the favor, Rabbi, but I would break down. I mean, it was that traumatic. And, you know, I think there's what to talk about, you know, because, you know, I mean, obviously the Jewish people in a concentration camp is incredibly, you know, and, you know, pictures and people know about it. But, you know, even like a side event, you know, here's American soldiers, how traumatized just to even see, you know, I don't know if, you know, here I'm Jewish and I don't know if I could really picture what that really is, even in my own mind, even though, of course, I've read so much about Holocaust and seen so much. But it's interesting that that's a whole different scenario about the Holocaust that really has to be told.
Yeah, so let's move on to talking about more up-to-date things with you being the district attorney. It says your third non-consecutive term.
well, actually, now I'm in my fourth non-consecutive
non-consecutive
term. Yes.
So what, you have like 2 terms, then you became county judge, and then you are in your second
Correct.
term in the, okay.
Yes.
So why would you go from being a successful, popular DA to county judge, and why go back again?
Well, actually, that's the normal progression for so many of us, that we become DA and then we become county judge. That was the case with my predecessor. It's been the case
Predecessor, which time?
well, good question. My predecessor, the first time, Judge Zattel, was
Beth
DA.
Kozolino was in between.
She was my successor and also my predecessor.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
So, because that was the first time a woman in Columbia County became district attorney.
That's correct.
So she was famous for that.
That's correct. Yes.
Not
and
much else, but
and she worked as a DA for 4 terms.
What was your experience like? I mean, when you came back as being district attorney, how was the technology and the science of crime fighting different from when you first left, so many years earlier?
There were a few changes that had been made in the 17 and a half years or 18 years that I had been gone. For example, for the short period of time that the death penalty was in effect, the New York State created what's called NIPT, New York Prosecutors Training Institute, which is an extremely helpful organization that assists DAs throughout the state, particularly local DAs and small county DAs such as myself. That didn't exist when I was DA the first time. Since I had been DA last time, there was a creation of an organization or agencies called Child Advocacy Centers throughout the state that exists to assist victims of crimes who are children. And they are extremely effective in assisting prosecutors such as myself as well. Those are two things that come to mind.
What about DNA?
DNA, Judge Harris, you may recall, wrote a decision permitting DNA for the first time in the criminal courts of New York State back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I think it was my last year or so that I was, in fact, DA. But since then, the use of DNA has been has exploded. Both and it's important. DNA is important both for prosecuting criminals and also exonerating persons suspected of crimes.
Right.
So that is a very big deal.
And it's funny because in the 80s, well, it's not funny, haha, but funny, ironic, that, when people, in the 80s, people would say, oh yeah, the jails are full of people who say they didn't do it. And it turns out through DNA, they were, it's true. The jails are full of people who didn't do what they were accused of or convicted of.
Well, I don't know full, but it happens.
Yeah. It's,
what would be the cases, like a murder case or maybe a rape case, these kind of things?
Well, DNA can be used in any number of types of crimes. Any time when there's someone has touched. In fact, lately there's something new called touch DNA, where the technology has evolved to a point where experts in the field are able to get someone's DNA simply by having touched an item. But it could be for any crime.
Mm-hmm. Did you have since Columbia County is, as you said, a small county, did you ever come across a case when you were judge that you had been involved with prosecuting and maybe it was on appeal or something when you were prosecuting as a DA and then you had to recuse yourself as judge? I would presume you would.
Yes, yes.
So.
Yeah. When I first became a judge in 1995, after having been elected in 1994, I could not preside over any of the cases that were then pending. And in fact, then our administrative judge Hughes sent me all over the state, and particularly down to Sullivan County for my first year, because I couldn't handle cases in Columbia County.
But so you were so the voters didn't see the problem with you being a judge and the potential conflict, and they still. Well, were you appointed in '94?
No, I was elected in '94. Yes.
That was George Pataki's first year, so that's why I was wondering.
He and I were elected in the same election.
Right. Okay. So, do you see that? What do you think was your biggest claim to fame in all the years that you were either DA or judge?
Well, it's hard to say. I have tried to be very active over the years. When I first became involved in prosecution, one of the most obvious problems that we were experiencing in Columbia County at the time is something that my my father and old timers around the county had told me about, and that was about corruption in the city of Hudson. The city of Hudson was known as an open city, and I think my friend John Friedman talked to you both about it when he appeared. From the late 19th century up through the 1950s, and Hudson was known as a mecca for prostitution and gambling. When prostitution decreased, but taking its place was drugs, and that occurred well up into the 1980s. And as a consequence, when I first became DA in 1987, I conducted a several-year-long investigation into the Hudson Police Department. That, good or bad, that probably is one of the prosecutions and investigations that both
the cleaning up the place. We'll talk about drugs. Is that, again, like you said, Mark and I have many politicians and even DAs on, and they just say the drugs are rampant today. It's incredible. They can't stop it. It's, I mean, there's limited to your office. You can't just go around picking people up.
Whoever told you that, Rabbi, is absolutely correct. And the price of heroin has dropped so low, and it's become so prevalent. Oftentimes I'm told, a lot of people tell me it's because of the advent of synthetic narcotics, which were distributed like candy and got so many people addicted that it's everywhere. And it's not limited to poor communities. It's middle-class communities, it's upper-class communities, it's everywhere.
Yeah, because it's so easy to get.
Yes, it is, and so cheap. It's a fraction of what it cost 20, 30 years ago.
So are you a fan of Narcan, or do you think that just makes the problem continue on longer?
Well, Narcan saves people's lives, so of course I'm a fan.
Well, we had people on who said, you know what, I'm not a fan of Narcan because, these people are harming themselves, and if they want to kill themselves, let them kill themselves. Why should we be reviving them and saying, and then just having them back on the streets doing this all over again, and then we got to keep saving them, and it's costing taxpayers a lot of money. Well, I didn't say that, but we did have some guests on who did, which surprised me. I was wondering what your thoughts were, since I had that experience hearing that from someone.
I'd respectfully disagree. They're human beings.
It's just a shame. I mean, as a rabbi, I have to counsel people, and it's very upsetting. I don't know, again, maybe segue into that is, it's a big issue, or even the United States, of legalizing marijuana. I don't know, where would you, I mean, people, it's interesting because I get it from, people come to my, listen, we're traditional. So you think they have traditional values. And they argue with me, oh yes, Rabbi, we really need to legalize marijuana. And I'm totally against it because I see the downside. I have to counsel people, with all their problems, and I even go prison visitations. I see what these things lead to. Oh, we will make money, we'll have billions of dollars in sales, and we'll get the criminals off the road. I know that it's an issue. I like a good Talmudic, I see two sides of the issue. I'm still against it. They're not convincing me. For money, you don't sell your life down the drain. But I don't know, how do you feel about, you think it would make life easier or get the criminals off the road?
Well, there's a lot of things that we could do to make life easier, but that doesn't necessarily make them good. I'm opposed to the legalization of marijuana.
Recreational.
I'm opposed to it.
Right. That's although medical.
Yes. Right. I'm in favor of the medical use of marijuana. I'm in favor of the medical use of any substance that can ease a cancer patient's pain, for example. But no, I'm against the legalization. Although, as you both know, many years ago, the possession of small amounts of marijuana was decriminalized. Right. Which means that the possession of a small amount of marijuana is akin to a traffic ticket.
So it's not. All right, well.
So you prosecute, what kind of percentage? Because there's two things, it's drug and then drug related. They have to have their fix, so they'll hold up the drugstore down the block. because they have to have their fix. I mean, even though you say, well, it's a robbery situation, but it's because of drugs.
Mhm.
Is that a major percentage of your crimes
Yes.
in Columbia?
Yes, the jails filled with people who may not necessarily be convicted of directly of a drug crime, but are convicted of crimes because of their drug addiction.
You know, it's funny because it's interesting that I had a case to walk through the Chautauqua County Jail in Western New York.
What did you do now over here, Margo?
And the sheriff gave me a tour of the jail, and I had never been in a jail before, or so he says to me, why don't these beds are more comfortable than they look. Why don't you go over and check out the mattress, see how it is. So I go in, I check out the mattress, I sit down on it, and all of a sudden, bam, he closes the door on me. And the shock of that metal, the metal door going on metal, really sent shockwaves through me. I got the chills, and it's not something I would want to repeat again. It's like the scared straight.
Sure.
I just, he did open it eventually.
Well, you're here now.
But he did take me through the different where the prisoners were, the hallway where all the cells were, and he said, these kids have been here several times, and it's just, they're usual suspects in Chautauqua County. Something goes wrong, they know who to pick up. Is the same case in Hudson?
Yes, yes. It's largely we're dealing with the same folks, the same families. In fact, now I'm on multiple generations, having been doing this for so long.
See, that's it. It's not just a matter of police.
I think
social services.
I think John Friedman said something to me. Someone said that they had 3 generations of family members in the jail at the same time. I was like, wow.
Well, that becomes a bigger issue, and it's not only criminal, but like it's a social services that have to intervene,
right?
Yes.
Break that cycle.
But you don't want to see, the family business being, how many times can you go through the jail system? But people do like the 3 hots and a cot, and it's structure for them, and they can't deal with lack of structure outside, which is what I always say: is religion gives you structure. You got to be at services a certain time. You have certain holidays. You got to prepare for the holidays. You have certain things that go on in your life that make you break your routine and give you that space that says, okay, I got to do this on this day for religious reasons. That's the structure.
It's interesting you say that, because when I first came upon that phenomenon, that persons that have an institutional personality, they need, as you say, to be in a jail. It's not like they're committing crimes purposely to go into a jail, but they feel more comfortable in jail. I mean, it's not a lot of people, but it happens.
It's a segment of the society. Yeah. What do you think of plea bargains? Do you like the fact that, because obviously I do watch the shows like Law and Order, and I noticed that they are always doing plea bargains. And I went down to the Brooklyn, an event the Brooklyn DA was having. I'm from Brooklyn, and Ken Thompson, and he had all of his different offices: the major crimes unit, the special victims unit. You don't have those units in
no,
DA's
we're too
office.
small.
No, it's just you.
Yes.
How many staff do you have?
I have 6 assistants.
6 assistants plus you. That's 7.
Yes.
So he has 7 in just like 1 unit.
Oh yeah.
But he's got a lot.
We could go in there and they wouldn't even notice us.
And I said to the woman who heads up the SVU, Special Victims Unit, I said, is Law and Order pretty accurate? And she said, yeah.
Oh, did
From
she?
her perspective, she thought. I mean, obviously the time frame, that you see on the screen between all the scenes, that's contracted. That never happens as quickly in TV as it does in real life. But she says, as far as the process goes, that's pretty. Do you do a lot of plea bargaining in Columbia County?
Well, I divide up the cases in the plea bargain, with respect to plea bargaining, in 2 categories: the persons who before indictment and post indictment. Police officers are obviously the persons that do the original charging, for the most part. It's necessary to deal with those cases by way of determining what is the best method to prosecute it. Like a police officer may, in fact, charge someone with a particular crime when our analysis over time, because a police officer has to make his decision or her decision very, very quickly, that we make a decision based upon all the circumstances. Perhaps that particular case may have been overcharged, or there are reasons to accept a plea to a reduced charge. That's one category, and I do engage in plea bargaining with respect to those categories. With respect to cases in which a grand jury has made a determination to vote an indictment against someone, in that category I do not engage in plea bargaining, and in fact I never have. In Columbia County from 1987 to date, in all cases in which I've been involved either as a DA or as a county judge, every count of every indictment has been resolved by guilty plea, verdict, or motion. There has been no
That's a
plea
lot of.
bargaining.
That's tough. That causes a backlog.
Yeah, that's
in
what
the
I
courts.
was going to say. That's a lot of time.
Actually, that may be the original reaction, but it all balances out.
Okay.
Once the attorneys and the defendants understand what the rules are, I don't have that many more trials than a similarly situated or a similar county.
Who controls the plea bargains? The county court, do the court judges or the district attorney?
A plea bargain can only exist if all three persons involved
The judge,
consent: the judge, DA,
prosecutor,
and the
defendants.
defense. Yes.
Okay, because was there ever a tussle over who controls plea bargains or anything? Or
Not as far as I'm
you
concerned.
know
Plea
of?
bargaining has always been,
A three-way.
yes.
Okay.
You may be referring to another issue that has arisen in the 3rd Judicial District, and that is whether or not a district attorney has the authority to decline to prosecute a case. That's not a plea bargain.
Right. So tell us about that. Since
Well, that issue has been resolved definitively by the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals, in a case called Soares v. Carter, Albany's DA and Albany City Court Judge Carter, His Honor
William
Judge Carter, yes, who I'm told is running for county court judge,
Yes.
had a disagreement as to whether or not a district attorney has this discretion to decline to prosecute a case.
There was the Occupy.
Yes,
Occupy
yes.
Yeah, I
Albany.
know.
Very
Yes.
good. Yeah.
I
Yes.
know about their case.
And
Again, the people were arguing both ways, I remember, in our congregation.
Soares won.
Yes, the Court of Appeals made a definitive ruling that the district attorney is responsible for prosecution and is responsible for making a determination as to who and what to prosecute and whether to prosecute.
I wanted to ask you about the raise the age.
Yes,
Okay, you familiar with that?
I am.
Okay, tell the audience what you know about it so I don't flub it up.
Okay.
And how you stand on that.
In New York State, persons beginning at age 16 may be prosecuted in a criminal court, both a local court as well as county court, where felonies are disposed of. That is not the case in many states throughout the nation, and as a consequence, there's a very large move in the legislature to increase that age such that family courts deal with persons who commit offenses which would be a crime if convicted by an adult up to age 18 or 19.
Right.
I believe the comparison between New York State and the other states is not well taken, because New York State has a provision in the law that mandates youthful offender adjudication for 95% of those persons. And I am also opposed because if were that to happen, depending on the most recent iteration of the proposed legislation, district attorneys may not necessarily be involved in those prosecutions, and they would occur in family court as opposed to county court.
So you're most district attorneys against raise the age?
I can't speak for the other
Well,
DAs.
Because there's a DA association.
Yes, there is.
So I don't think they took a position on this. but I just thought maybe through the association you might have known whether it was.
I believe the majority of DAs in the state are opposed, but there are several DAs
Right.
who have very good reputations and are very well respected, who are in favor of the legislation. I'm not. I'm also opposed to the legislation because, as you may know, persons who are younger people who oftentimes aren't afraid to go to jail, aren't afraid of being punished, aren't afraid of the consequences, and don't understand the consequences, and may oftentimes be more dangerous than adult criminals.
You know, I always put a mark, because it's the Jewish view, I have to put, you know, it's interesting, a bar mitzvah, which most people think is a big party, but it's more than that. It means that a person's obligated, like you're saying, they understand, they have the judgment really to know what's right or wrong. So I don't know if it applies nowadays because kids are more immature, they're in high school, they're I should say on the television, even the college students are, you know, a little immature. They're just playing around and they don't understand the consequences.
I know I was.
Yeah, I know. So, but here, maybe long ago, it applied 13 years old, but I still think it's a decent age where, hey, you know, you're old enough to know, and, you know, these teenagers can be very dangerous,
Yes.
really, a lot of times.
We have a facility in Columbia County called Brookwood Secure Center,
Yes.
in which many dangerous criminals are housed, and they're all young, and they're all teenagers.
And that's where
they're murderers and rapists, and it's very, very bad.
But the governor said that's where if this raise the age goes through, that's where the young folks would be.
No, there's going to be another facility in Columbia County, the Hudson Correctional Facility, that is being modified now to house young criminals as well. In fact, the Commissioner of Corrections was kind enough to respond to a letter that I sent him last month, explaining that that is their plan.
So while you oppose it, you may still be saddled with
Yes.
the youngsters
Yes.
in your county.
Yes.
So what about?
Well, yeah, just on that note, that's an on P, Route P from New York.
9P?
No.
Yeah.
No, it's right behind the courthouse in Hudson.
Well, then I don't know.
In
Because
Columbia
I actually
County.
went, you know, because like I say, I do visit prisoners. And so, unfortunately, there was a Jewish kid, so they called me, and from New York, but obviously I'm close to it in Albany. And, you know, that's where I got my idea from also. You see, so I thought, kids, you know, first time I went to a juvenile prison, you think, all right, I think of a kid, a 10-year-old little kid. These kids were bigger than I was.
Sure.
I look up to them. These are kids. They're bigger than you, Joe.
Well, they also have to work out in the yard.
Well, they were grew.
To protect themselves. And,
yeah, I'm just saying, but you don't grow 6 feet in the gymnasium. But
I wanted to ask you about mixed martial arts and the legalizing the bouts in New York State. Do you favor that?
Yeah, I have to apologize, Mr. Gronich, and plead ignorance. I don't know anything about it. Okay. I really don't. Sorry.
No, because it's going. It looks like the state legislature will legalize mixed martial arts. It's the last. New York is the last state to have it professional bouts illegal. So that might.
And what's the difference, Mark, between that and boxing?
Because mixed martial arts, they're actually doing like karate, jiu-jitsu, other art form, you know, and as well as boxing, and it's really brutal and it's done in a cage. And they want to take it around to the smaller communities, such as Hudson, to have these bouts
the shows
and all that. So it's really brutal, but apparently it's not as dangerous as boxing might be. You know. But anyway, I thought I'd ask you about that. What do you see as the biggest issues for you coming up as the DA's association, or you know, in just a general idea? What are the big issues?
Well, I think you already discussed two of them. Raise the age, I think, is a very important issue, and for us in Columbia County, it's an important issue that Hudson Correctional Facility is going to be housing young criminals who oftentimes are more dangerous than adult criminals.
And what else?
Well, the heroin use. You know, what I always find disturbing about the heroin and cocaine and other narcotics is the fact that we don't grow poppies or coca in Columbia County. So all the heroin and cocaine comes from outside the country.
Yeah.
But local Columbia County taxpayers have to pay me and the sheriff and the local judges.
Well, maybe they think Colombia in South America is
Thinking to Colombia, we're back.
You know, it's maybe they're just getting the O and the U mixed up in the middle of the word, you know, but you got to put some gates up and build a wall maybe and have, you know, show ID before you come in. I wanted to...
One more question.
Yeah, you're, what, 62 now?
Yes, I am.
How much longer can you continue to do this? And what, because we have the word strength, koyach. How much koyach do you have in you to keep campaigning and keep going forward?
Mr. Gronich, I love my job.
Yeah.
And I would like to do it for as long as the people of Columbia County allow me to, and honor me.
So you say you're halfway there till 120. That's what you say usually.
The district attorney in New York City, Robert Morgenthau,
Was 90-something.
94.
All right, so you got a lot of years ahead of you.
Well, you have a lot of
I could start anew right now.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
Another 30 years over here.
Well, best of success to you.
You know, I just say end off with a Jewish view. I mean, what you're doing though is something in Jewish, because law and order, I mean, just keeping the laws is very important for any society, for all societies. So you're upholding the law and keeping the criminals out of our hair and letting normal people live their lives and doing a good job. And like I say, you should live till 120 with a good job and success and good health.
Great to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you both. That went by
Was that
fast.
fun?
That went